Hey, what's happening? Sheil Kapadi here from Philly.com Sports, joined by a special guest, Andrew Brandt from the National Football Post. Andrew, the offseason is underway for most teams in the league, but this year it's a little different than previous years. Uncapped year looming. A lot of people have some questions, I guess. First of all, how likely is it that we are going to see an uncapped year and then an agreement is not going to be reached?
Well, we're facing sort of the end of the NFL as we know it, Sheil. It's going to be very different. There have been a lot of negotiations between the union and the NFL, but they don't seem to be producing much. So on March 5th, we may be entering a league year in 2010 without a salary cap. Now, the issues are many, but it really boils down to, are we going to have a system that's been like what we have, with a salary cap, with 4 years for free agency for players, with all these different benefits, or are we going to have a different system? In a nutshell, it came down to 2006, there was an agreement. The owners didn't feel comfortable with it. They had a right to opt out, meaning 2010 is the last year of the deal. Well, as per the deal, the last year of the deal doesn't have a salary cap. So now we're entering that time. Many people thought by now we'd have a new extension continuing the salary cap, but we don't. So we're entering a whole new phase with lots of different rules and lots of different regulations.
Yeah, we're inching closer to that March 2nd deadline, and one of the things that has been written about, talked about, is this Final 8 rule, which what it does, it restricts the ability for the final 8 teams in the playoffs, the teams that made the divisional round. They don't have the same flexibility as other teams to sign unrestricted free agents. But is this going to be a significant rule, something we hear a lot more about as we enter free agency?
I think so. I mean, what we have is a lot of restrictions to sort of spur the teams to get a deal done, and now we don't have a deal, so there are restrictions on the 8 teams in the divisional round. And the 4 teams that lost in the divisional round can basically sign a couple players beyond the ones they lose, for one for over $3.5 million, one for over $5 million, and then the 4 teams in the championship round, really a lot of restrictions. In a nutshell, really can't sign a player more than what they lose in terms of salary loss and gain. You can always sign players cut by other teams, you can always sign your own unrestricted free agents, but for the Final 8, these are new rules. Never have we seen this in cap football.
Yeah, I think Eagles fans, that was the only silver lining they got from losing to the Cowboys there in the first round of the playoffs. Right. But the last question I wanted to ask you, you've been on both sides kind of the negotiating table, and a lot of this information, at least from my perspective, is coming out now to the general public about the uncapped year. But from a player's perspective, do you think the players are informed or aware of just how this thing's going to play out once free agency starts?
They're getting there now in the offseason, because you're in a situation now, if you have 4 or 5 years in the league, in the past you've been a free agent, ability to talk to any team in the league. Now you're property of the team you're on, and that's news to a lot of people. So they're finding out now it's a whole new world in unrestricted free agency. 212 players around the league thought they were going to be free agents and now won't be due to these new rules. So a lot new, a lot more diluted group of free agents this year.
Yeah, it's just a whole new landscape, I think, for a lot of the people involved. So it'll be interesting to see how the offseason plays out. But we want to give a special thanks to Andrew Brandt for joining us. You can read his content on the nationalfootballpost.com, and you can read my blog, Moving the Chains, in Philly.com's Eagle section. Until next time, I'm Sheil Kapadia for Philly.com.